Hello, hello everyone! Welcome to yet another edition of Bedtime Stories. I am very sorry that the last week's story couldn't be read to you guys, so to make it up to you, today is our story doubleheader. First, I'm going to be reading to you about the goddess Nit, which is the weaver of the cosmos. And in the next story is A Blustery Day, which is another Winnie the Pooh story. Again, I don't really know how it worked out that I had two Winnie the Pooh stories to read to you in a row. It just kind of worked out that way. So, this is part one of our little doubleheader here. And this is the goddess Nit, or Knife. I'll be referring to her as Nit throughout the story. So here we go. There's more to every story than meets the eye. It simply isn't that some things aren't visible, which they surely are, and it simply isn't simply that the eye is sometimes blind, which it surely can be, by choice or by being duped. It's that stories have so many sides, it's impossible to see every facet at once. And it's that stories over time, telling and retelling themselves, becoming and re-becoming in ways we might have not have anticipated originally, but that ultimately feel inevitable. That's why it's easy to fail to see Nit. She herself is herself, and at the same time she is the facets of so many other gods and goddesses. Nit is elusive. Life needs a source. In the beginning, the primordial waters of Nun parted as the god Ra created himself through words. Yet still, this self-generation was within the lapping wetness of Nun. Nun was his source. Ra went on to create others, all on his own, without a partner. So he tells us. But, really, did he really do it all on his own? Nun couldn't bear to leave the rest of creation entirely up to the sun god. Ra was a burly fellow, a shouter, indefatigable, and somewhat blunt. These qualities could be assets in many situations, but not all. He needed the help of Nun's feminine aspects. He needed the help of Nit, the more subtle side of Nun. Nit was self-begotten, just as Ra was. But again, she came from Nun. She had a source. And she formed herself as a wise one. What was the point of doing otherwise, after all? She was immediately respected for her wisdom. When the god Heru saw Aset, the son of the goddess Aset and the god Usir, fought with his uncle god Set, Nit was called upon at one point as arbiter. Nit took the side of Heru's Aset. It was his right to inherit his father's throne. But she recommended that Set receive compensation. He'd already usurped the throne, so he was being forced to abnegate it. That smarted, and that meant compensation could help. She said Set should be given 2 Syrian war goddesses, Astarte and Anat, as wives. That wasn't the end of the conflict, of course. It went on and on for years. But it could have been, if Set hadn't been stubborn and had listened to the wisdom of Nit. In this way, Nit was like a side of the god Tehuti, Ra's tongue, and the champion of reason and balance. There was something commanding about Nit, something that made you pay attention. She was determined to create, and so she picked up the weaver's loom, the most prized possession of women, and she wove and wove. Some say Nit wove the world. But she didn't need people to believe in such a grandiose thing. She was satisfied with women weavers honoring her. She paid them back by offering her protection. She extended that protection to all married women. In this way, she was not just a side of Nun and of Tehuti. She was a side of the gentle, loving goddess Hateru. Nit had a core of pity that looked at the loom and realized where there were others she could help. So she wove and wove again. She wove the white linen swaths that circled bodies in mummification. This was her gift to the dead, for it was often injuries to the torso that caused death, injuries in battle. Nit cared about battle injuries because she was goddess of war. Well, how, one might ask? How could a goddess protect married women and at the same time lead their men into the dangers of war? But, look again. Look as hard as you can. Nit did. She knew there would always be enemies, always be threats. War could be an evil in itself. but it might also be a response to threats. War was complex. So Nit was the side of the ruthless, furious goddess Sekhmet. The goddess Hatiru and the goddess Sekhmet were two different sides of a single coin, but they walked separately, with different faces and names. The goddess Nit, instead, was the whole coin, good and evil inextricably intertwined. And she felt more whole than anyone, for that's the way the world was, as she saw it. Not one color. Not just bad or good, but the whole rainbow, the whole span from decent to indecent. Nit wore a shield that some thought was the figure 8 on its side. Others thought it was a symbol for the infinite. But in fact, it was the outline of two click beetles head-to-head. Like this. Nit loved the click beetle. It was less showy than the scarab, so dear to Ra. Nit liked modesty. But even better, the click beetle surprised you. Whenever it wanted, it could flip through the air with a loud and fly not far from where it started. Nit loved that fact. Life was surprising, after all. Life could fling itself this way and that, leaving you searching for what you thought was right in front of you a moment before, leaving you wondering what was reality and what was illusion. Maybe it was because of her role as goddess of war, and maybe not, but Nit also became goddess of the hunt. She helped men spot prey and take them down. This was one way she protected marriages. Families got fed. She had her own marriage. She was wife to the god Khnum. Soon she was mother to 2 sons. One was the crocodile god, Sobek, and she nursed him with love, which may be why this beast never became cruel. The other was the god Apep, who arose by accident when Nit spat into the waters of Nun. Apep immediately dove to the underworld abyss, as the serpentine demon that attacked Ra's boat, Mesektet, every night, and got speared, his blood splashing everywhere, only to mend and then fight the same battle the next night. That both her children belonged to the water made sense. Nit was an extension of Nun. That one lived above and one lived below also made sense. Nit was always a mix, always half this and half that. Aren't we all? And this is something to think about, because we are done with the first part of our story doubleheader. Please tune in a few minutes for me to read you A Blustery Day from my Book of Disney bedtime stories. So, see you later.